I'm aware that I am the last thing standing between you and lunch, so I will try to be brief and entertain you. And thanks a lot for the invitation. That's actually the first time I'm speaking in Poland, which is the country of my birth, but I haven't been living here for quite a while. I hope someday I will manage to give a talk in Polish as well, but today is not the day. So how did I came to the topic of artificial intelligence? People ask me if I'm a developer, and then I say, no, I'm actually a statistician. So now we call it data scientist because, you know, statistics is like the boring old brother of data science. But this statistics, and combined with my everlasting interest in science fiction, gave me actually quite a good start into this topic. So I started working in the area of customer experience about 13 years ago or 14 years ago. And back then, it was actually mostly about trying not to make users too angry. And back then, working with clients and conducting user tests, I quite often get this response when the users get frustrated. Oh, no problem, they will learn it eventually. They will learn how it works. So now the expectations toward technology have changed. Back then, we just expected technology to work. People used it to work and didn't maybe expect to have too much joy combined with this. But now when the technology is everywhere, the expectations towards customer experience have changed totally. So we don't go into internet, yeah? We have the technology everywhere on our body, in our pockets, and basically everything can become a smart thing, from toothbrush, t-shirts to, you know, the whole traffic lights and traffic systems. And one reason for this change, or one enabler of this change, is artificial intelligence, or it's becoming more and more one of these factors. So what do I mean with artificial intelligence? It's still a concept that sometimes is kind of difficult to define. I don't mean the strong AI, what you may know from movies like Ex Machina. What we are talking about right now are mostly algorithms or expert systems, so it probably should be rather called machine learning, but yeah, machine learning, it's again like statistics, it sounds very boring, and artificial intelligence sounds just awesome. So that's kind of a hype at one hand. But if I can use this word and make people more interested in this topic, then whatever. And sometimes people are asking me, okay, what does AI have to do with customer experience at all? Yeah, it's just a technology. And for me, the algorithms are kind of the brain to the experiences. Like that's what's behind, and then the UX is bringing, the heart, the emotions to this. So one of my favorite experiences, and when I was writing about this, one of my friends asked me or said, "Oh, I don't see any AI in there." Anyone knows Duolingo here? Anyone uses it? Okay, great, quite a lot of people. And I think that's basically the point, yeah? I mean, you shouldn't see the AI there. What we expect from customer experience is that it works, and that it works in a way that it's personalized, that it works for us without us thinking about how exactly it works. There are another great experiences possible because of the customer experience. So for example, we have here also this caption service. So Google, for example, just recently announced that they are introducing the captions and transcriptions to all their products. So you basically can make video calls using captions if you're, for example, hearing impaired. So that there are a lot of possibilities of having this AI or algorithms making our products much better. But let me start with some maybe more basic examples. So the thing we know most, or we're really used to, is personalization. The best experience probably for this are services like Netflix or YouTube. I don't know if some of you succeed in watching one YouTube video or one Netflix episode, because it's really, really hard actually. It's because their algorithms are so good that they are always recommending us something new and creating this experience which, I mean, at one point it seems of course great because we never run out of things to watch, but on the other hand it's quite scary because at some point of time it's 3 in the morning and I'm still watching YouTube videos. So these are basically the 2 dimensions in all this technology UX topics. I will not manage to talk too much about ethics. You could have another talk just about AI ethics. I know that we have one about UX, so maybe there will be discussion about this as well. And of course, Amazon is also a typical example of personalization. And while being on Amazon, it was like 2 years ago, and I see all the books, you know, user experience design and so on. And then I see this. It's called Everything You Need for the Baby in One List. So then I started thinking, did my browsing behavior somehow suggested that I might be pregnant? Because, you know, maybe this example from Target, where basically a 16-year-old girl got the prospect with baby clothing and so on, because her behavior changed, her shopping behavior changed, so they predicted that she might be pregnant. So I thought Amazon is doing the same for me, so I just really went to the drugstore and bought a pregnancy test because I thought they might know me better than I know myself. But no, it was not this kind of anticipatory or predictive experience. It was probably just I somehow fit the target group. I just was thinking too much about the algorithm behind this. But then we get to this anticipation. And anticipation for me is just one step after just personalization. So for me, an anticipatory experience would be when I get back tomorrow and I will write to my partner, hi darling, I'll be home at 8 and I'm quite stressed out, you know, the flight was terrible and so on. And then I will get this kind of experience, a bath, you know, wine and whatever. And this is the not so anticipatory experience we still have a lot, both in human or technological interactions. So anticipatory experience is when I just, you know, give the technology a clue and get the perfect experience back. So there are very small examples of this kind of experiences we are using already. So every smartphone supports this recommendation of the next word to type, even if it's sometimes really funny because one day I just wrote to my boyfriend if we want to do something together. So I did it in German, and heute means in German today, and heiraten means marry. So I wanted to ask him if we do something today, and the recommendation was if he wants to marry me. So I don't know how many people are actually making, you know, proposals via iMessage, but I guess there's probably a noticeable number because otherwise I will not get this recommendation. And the other type of anticipatory experience I actually really liked. I was sitting once in Berlin, my hometown, in a restaurant I didn't know before, and we were sitting outside and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then we got this smart notification from Foursquare. By the way, the best tip for this restaurant, you have to go inside and order. So this was a very, very good anticipatory experience that was actually really meeting our needs at this point. Other types, you might know, I don't know how well it works here. It doesn't work very well in Germany, but it works really good in the US, is the Google Now. So for example, Google Now knows earlier, actually, than Lufthansa, then my flight will be late. So I've got the recommendation from Google Now that my Lufthansa flight will be delayed before I get it actually from Lufthansa. So this is, again, the kind of anticipatory experience that really works well if your normal day and without you actually doing anything. Or the last example for this, I know that the Polish fintech scene is like even much better than the German one, because we are in Germany pretty slow when it comes to this. But we still have something that's called Finanzguru, which is actually quite a nice application using all our bank data to actually make predictions and recommendations on how much money I will have to spend, or what kind of contracts I might terminate to save money and so on. So this, again, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to look at my account. I'm just getting relevant information for myself. But these are still examples from the graphical user interface area. And that's what we most of the time actually associate with design or with customer experience. But what we always, or quite often tend to forget, that graphical user interface is actually quite young. It's about as young as I am. And of course it became a standard in the last 30 years or so. But it's still a way we have to interact with machines so that they understand us. It's not making the machine understand our way of communication. Because the way humans are actually used to communicate and have been communicating for the past few 100,000 years is actually language. And you see this issue especially when the screens are getting smaller and smaller. So we're optimizing the screen experience all the time, and then seeing that we need sometimes some things like 20 steps to just book a flight, which we actually can express in just one sentence what we want to do, but we need like 20 steps to do it on the screen. So the best interface would be actually no interface at all in this case. The interface that basically knows me and maybe just read out my thoughts or understand what I'm saying. So that's why, like in the last 2 or 3 years, the conversational interfaces have become very popular, and they are very good examples of them. There are some in healthcare, for example. You have something like Ada Health, that lets you talk about your health issues and make some preliminary diagnosis. Or you even have interfaces where you can talk to your deceased relatives. So like this guy did, he recorded his father before he died and then made a chatbot based on the interviews with him. But then you also have quite terrible interfaces. Oh, you can read it, it's big enough. So as you can see, this one, how would you describe the term bot to your grandma? My grandma is dead. All right, thank you for your feedback. So that's where you see kind of the limitations of the technology that still exists. But that's not the only limitation. The main limitation is that actually reading is quite difficult. So even in countries like Germany, for example, with or I don't know the statistics for Poland, but where the literacy is very high, you still have a significant amount of this kind of secondary illiteracy among adults. So adults who learned how to write and read, but then they forget it because they never do this. So this kind of interfaces are very difficult for this kind of people. So that's why, obviously, we tried to do the next step and actually move more towards a voice, which you now see when I sit in an underground in Berlin, and I have a group of like teens or tweens sitting around me. Then basically everyone is just talking their messages into their phones, and nobody's typing anymore, which makes me feel old because I think it's terrible. And I thought, when the point comes that you think what the young people are doing is terrible, then you're really getting old. So that's sad. And you have this, and this voice interfaces give a new possibility of interacting with things that don't have screens. Like this is Barbie, for example, yeah? That makes possible to talk to it, and it answers, and it of course records and does something with your data. That's definitely an interesting way of interacting with technology, but on the other way, of course, something we have to think about when it comes to privacy. And in the next step, probably some of you heard already of the Google Duplex that even doesn't really require your interaction. It just does stuff for you. It really serves as an assistant.
So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
So how can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for?
Okay, so you can hear that it really starts actually sounding as a real person, even implementing stuffs like that are not necessarily not necessary in this conversation, but actually make it seem very humane. And the next step, you even can actually make such kind of interface speak your voice. Oops, it doesn't work.
Maybe in the near future, it will be very easy to generate a voice of a person based on a few recordings. I could have, for example, a digital assistant that sounds like my mom and a sex robot that sounds like my boyfriend.
So this is a system called Lyrebird, but there are more and more like this. And I just recorded like 30 sentences. And based on this, I could basically generate every speech that sounds a little like me. Of course, it sounds quite robotic, but I think it sounds at least a little like myself. But still, like some of the interfaces are definitely less than perfect. And the big problem is that, for example, car companies are not using the interfaces like Google's or Amazon's that are actually pretty mature for the obvious reason that they actually want to have their data and their customer interactions. And then these interfaces sound kind of like this. Oops.
Straße.
Abbruch.
Waldenser Straße.
Wie bitte?
Waldenser Straße.
Die Straße bitte.
Waldenser Straße.
Weidensoll wurde übernommen. Bitte nennen Sie die Hausnummer oder sagen Sie Zielführung starten.
So you don't need to actually understand German to see what's happening there. So we're trying to interact with this interface, and you could see how annoyed the guy in this video gets. And luckily he was not driving, because if you have this kind of annoying interaction while driving, it might have actually quite serious consequences. And this kind of voice voice aspects are getting in also in going in different directions. So today we all have to speak English so that we can understand each other, and maybe in the future we will really use this kind of Babel fish on the conferences, like the Google Pixel Buds that are already able to translate 40 languages instantly. And also Skype and other providers are going into this direction. So what kind of change in the interactions also not only between humans and technology, but between humans it will make. And of course, all these smart things, again, that can provide you different experiences based on the sensors, based on artificial intelligence, without you actually doing anything. So you, like kind of smart mattresses that can automatically detect what kind of temperature you prefer and warm your bed into this temperature. So all these things that are actually beyond the screens. Still, the big problem of the technology is the part of emotions. So what we saw already in the chatbot or also in this car interface is that they just rely on text and they don't really rely on context and on emotions. And I think that will be the next big step into the human-machine interaction when we actually have interfaces that not only detect emotions, but can also react in an empathetic way. I have to speed up because we don't have a lot of time anymore. Brain interface, that's basically the next step, and we already have it, for example, in prostheses. That are basically the first steps toward brain interface. There are examples of using brain interface to drive a car, which might not be necessary when we have self-driving cars. And you even had a brain drone contest when you're basically driving a drone just with your brain waves. And the other aspect is what does it mean actually to designers? So the job of the designer, many designers here, who is a designer? Okay, a lot of designers. So the job of the designer is totally changing. We think that it's the potential of automating the job of the designer is very limited. But on the other hand, there are so many jobs or so many parts of these jobs that are actually boring and exhausting, and we actually don't want to do this, so that may be a possibility for the use of AI. So I will spare you the videos because we don't have so many time.
Show an example of a retail website design.
But here, for example, you can see where you can, for example, automate or simulate simulate how the user is seeing what's on the picture, where are the hotspots, for example, where user will see and click. Or you can use already AI, that's Google, for drawing support, so it even understands, the terrible way of me drawing, trying to draw a car or something like this. And or, for example, this is the one by Airbnb of automatically taking your wireframes and putting it into actually real click dummies. Or delivering, an individual Nutella jar to every person. So does it mean that we designers are going to look for a job? I think not necessarily, but I think that we are constantly redefining what actually being a designer means and what the design is. And I think that in the times of AI, we have to think more and more about how this stuff works and not just how it looks like. What does it actually have to do with Agile? I think it has everything to do with Agile. First, for me, the AI is not about technology. So technology is becoming a commodity. You can get the technology, but the main point about this is how to deliver customer value, how to meet the customer needs. It's about interdisciplinarity, it's about multifunctional tools, teams. Many companies make the mistakes and engage like huge team of machine learning developers. Yeah, that's great. We need them, but it's not enough. The question is, what's the problem behind this? What the user needs behind this? You need psychologists, you need designers. It doesn't really help if you just hire a bunch of machine learning experts. It's still a new technology, so we're always in the area of experimentation. And as we just heard about the MVP, of course we all think big when it comes to our products, but we need to start with really small things, and basically there is no project that is too small to start with. I think the important thing here is also like faking it until you make it, and the best example is that what I showed you already actually. The Google Duplex, yes, it can be, it's automated, and yes, there are robocalls that are doing the appointments, but still like 25% is done by humans. Why? Because the technology is not always as mature as it could be, and we still need humans to improve it. And yes, it's iterative. So especially for AI products, or actually for other products, but here in this case it's also very important to not just make something that's done and then put it into the world. It's very iterative. You are evaluating it all the time. So you might have read this headline that like thousands of Amazon workers are actually listening actively to the conversations, and there is the reason for this, because otherwise they cannot improve this. So there are still humans needed to improve the experience constantly. And obviously it never ends. So you are improving it all the time. Sometimes people ask me, where are we going? Where are we going to be in like 5 years and 10 years? And that's a question that's always very difficult to answer, because the growth is exponential, and we never thought that we would be here like 10 years ago. So it's very hard to imagine where we will be like 10 years from now. But I think that the AI will not be like this, which is the typical stock photo that you get when you image search AI, but rather like this. I don't know if you know it, there's the film, the movie Hair. So basically the operation system that becomes more and more autonomous and invisible, and I think that's about how I imagine AI in the next few years, like the invisible virtual assistants or virtual helps that are predictive and supportive and helping us, being the butlers and helping us with the daily task. And at least for now, because many people are scared about something like artificial general intelligence and so on, but that's a discussion for a whole different talk and different discussion. So that's it, and have a nice lunch, and let's talk later.